A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Jim Kreuzer, he has the new wireless Pioneer. He's got a large private wireless museum in Elma, New York, near Buffalo. He's been doing this for about 14 years. This is one of those classic cases of a hobby becoming a life's work. He's a rare book dealer by trade. He specializes in antique science and technology books. As a matter of fact, he does have a booth here. It's a wonderful place to go and browse. And he's got all kinds of esoteric books that are in great condition, although he says he keeps the best for himself. He goes to England twice a year to look for other things to buy, and in the process he has some of the little pieces of equipment that you see on the tables here. He writes for several association newsletters. His collection is the largest private pre-1920 wireless apparatus collection in the country. Assisting Jim in this talk will be Jim Hardesty, a friend of his from Ithaca, New York. And Jim will be doing some of the commentary during this talk. So please welcome Jim Kreuzer and Jim Hardesty.
Thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate that. Can you hear us? I guess you can. Happy to be back again with the microphone. I know we have a great presentation here today. Before we start, one of the things I want to mention is everything here obviously is extremely fragile. So of course we'll hope that we want everybody to stay back, and even when we're finished, we ask you to keep some distance from the table and the things. We'll try to show tubes again and do everything we can to make it answer your questions and show you things. But it's very, very important that we observe at least a modicum of distance and respect for the tubes. They've made it over 100 years. They still have their vacuum. They work extremely well. Okay, I think that's easy to understand. Now let me make a statement almost exactly opposite from that and say that those of you in the peanut gallery back there, or wherever that is, will not really be able to appreciate what we have here. And even those of you that are up in here really are not going to get the full value of this. So I would break a precedent, or make a precedent here we've never done before. I would ask you to come in, move your chairs, and come in and be right up with us. Yeah, come in. I think we have to leave a fire lane, but come in and just sort of keep your chairs in the same way. So yeah, Bill and Jim and Mark, come on up here. I want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to see this. Those of you in the back, even if you have to stand or sit on top of your chairs, I would like to really give you the opportunity to see all these things. Make sure that the effect is good. For photographs, I have to turn to my friend in science and so on and ask about, if you're going to take the best picture with your camera of these, what would you do? What's the best way to go about it?
Well, for those of you who have a camera that uses a shutter that you can adjust for a bulb setting, that's the B on your shutter adjustment, you need a time exposure. So if you can hold your breath and hold the camera very still, convert your f-stop so that it's wide open. If it's f2.4 or f1.8, whatever is the widest iris or aperture that you can set your lens to, and do a bulb exposure. If you can't do a bulb exposure, if you can do a 1-second exposure, that's also good. But in a setting like this, if you have a high-speed film, or even if you have a low-speed film, the object is to get the longest time exposure you possibly can. If you only have a camera that only shoots a 60th of a second, which is pretty much standard for strobe flash-type pictures, you probably won't get very much as far as the effects of the discharge.
Thank you very much, Bill. Right, okay. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to display the tubes and talk about them, give a historical perspective, and try to answer questions as we go along. I would ask you not to feel shy or held back from asking questions as we go along. Stop us if you haven't seen enough. If you want to get another shot, we're really bringing these tubes out here and getting this marvelous friend here on the airplane and all that was a challenge that I really have to turn to my friend here who got all that together and even encouraged me to do that. What you see here today is, and I really want to say this right from the beginning, is a very special contribution by a friend of mine. Jim Kreuzer and I have been friends for a number of years. Our friendship actually really got started over a rather curious and bizarre situation with an antique radio. Someone down at Cornell was throwing out an early Mignon radio, which actually was manufactured in Elmira, New York, not very far from where I live, and so somebody gave it to me with a bunch of other things and said, here, see if you can take this up to the Antique Wireless Association swap meet, symposium, and so on, and get rid of it. So I had a presentation to give, and I took it up, and I was running around, and Jim was running around, and another collector, Lauren Peckham, who would sell his house to get that rig and all this, he was running around, and it turned out that the thing slipped away to somebody else, and everybody flipped out, and so that's where we really began ribbing each other about every time we used to see each other, he'd say, you don't have any more of those Mignons, do you? Anyway, we've gotten beyond that. I think we have anyway. Jim is a marvelous collector. It isn't curiosity that makes a good collector. Sometimes I say it's greed. You really have to get out there and you have to dig and look and look and look and take the time and read and understand where things are and know where stuff should be and where they scrapped the ships and took the old radios off and where this and that happened. This is a gentleman here who has that ability beyond anyone else I know, and his collections are excellent. That's not even a good word for it. It has been my pleasure, and I mean, it's also caused me nausea a lot of times just to see the incredible things that he has and sort of deal with that, I think they call it gut feelings, or I wish I had maybe just a few of them. You know what I mean, Dave, and some of the others you probably do too. To begin. Well, this morning I was talking about the beginnings of this particular kind of glassware, and I said that in about 1674, a gentleman by the name of Picard, working at the Paris Observatory, was carrying a barometer and sloshed around some mercury inside of a tube that was evacuated by virtue of the fact that the mercury pulling down on the barometer created a vacuum in the upper part of the capillary tube. And he saw blue flashes of light as a result of something called triboluminescence, which is the friction of the mercury against the glass, actually liberating some electrons that excited the gas in the tube and produced, when they relaxed, produced a light that was there. And for many years after that, experimenters did all kinds of things with mercury. Francis Hauksbee, for instance, was not only famous for static machines, but he also was famous for his experiments with vacuum tubes with mercury in them, making his own kind of vacuums. That's a good idea, because this really gave me a problem. Vacuum pumps in the early days were, well, the inventor of the vacuum pump, I guess, is Otto van Guericke, who used an early, what would you call it, a fire department syringe type thing. They used to fill it up with water, squirt fires out with it, but he turned the foot valve around and hooked up the end to glass tubes and then began to work it the other way, and he could pump the vacuum in tubes, and thus began experiments with vacuum. But vacuum pumps did not really take on what can I say, didn't become good enough until, I suppose, well into the 18th century and into the early part of the 19th century, where they really got pretty good. Running up to the time of a gentleman by the name of Heinrich Geissler. And Geissler, as a matter of fact, this type of tube that you see here, maybe you could hold up a Geissler tube just named after this gentleman. This type of tube, a glass blower with the abilities to make all these curlicues and twists and bends and take different types of uranium glass and lead glass and German glass and all this and put these in here and then fill them up, pump the air out, have gases such as hydrogen, obviously nitrogen and oxygen present by virtue of the atmosphere, and then be able to pass electrical charges through them and create some lighting effects as a result of the excitation and relaxation of the gas that's within the tube. Geissler had also a tool at his disposal that was not available before Faraday and Henry's time, and it's a tool that we see right here, and this is in the earliest times this was known as the inductorium or induction coil. This kind here, this is another smaller version of it, This particular coil here is it's made by Newton and Company. Actually, Newton and Apps were merged in the 1890s. Previous to that time, coils were manufactured. The famous coil maker Apps in England made some of the greatest coils of all time. Actually, the Spotswood induction coil, if any of you have ever read any blurbs about that, huge. If you've been to the Science Museum in London, you see the Spotswood coil, this huge, amazing coil with just infinite amount of wire, and produced a 48-inch spark or something. It was quite incredible. This is a little smaller version. This is the 6-inch model, right? The 6-inch Newton. This is very interesting because this particular coil here is brand new. In fact, it came in the box. We had the box upstairs, and so this coil, Jim got it, took it out of the box, and here it is. We figured that if we were going to bring these wonderful tubes up here, that it certainly would, we should try to have it be a class act all the way down the line. So we have a brand new Newton induction coil dating to about 1899, 1895. So this certainly would have been present at the time of the discovery of X-rays and so on. And it would be used, although Roentgen's coil was different than this. This is a 6-inch coil. This is a 1-inch coil here, and we have the smaller coil because we don't need this kind of high pressure to run some of the tubes and heat up too much. One of the things that you'll notice as we go on with this is that I was really enjoying Jim Corum talking this morning just about kind of waxing toward the philosophical about dealing with some of these things and appreciating some of the beauty of them. Every one of these tubes here represents that idea, and as you can see, and if you look at the work of the glass blowers that put these together, goes far beyond just the curlicues and the twists and bends that are available in these things. That go into the minute workmanship in some of the paddle wheel tubes and different things like that, and it is I can't think of a word to describe it. It's really beyond anything that it seems we know about in the latter part of the 20th century. And we would do well, perhaps, to take a look back at some of these things and appreciate it. Heinrich Geissler in the 1850s was an excellent glassblower. Actually, he worked for another gentleman by the name of Kreuzer, and Kreuzer was one of the first people to observe the electron. He didn't know that's what it was, but to observe the cathode rays inside of evacuated tubes in which electricity was being passed. Geissler built many things and did a lot of experiments for Kreuzer, and during his tenure doing that, he also got quite involved, manufactured a really amazing vacuum pump system, the early mercury type of vacuum pump, which simply is this, that I talked about Picard and the early vacuum pump, that not a vacuum pump, this discharge tube that he had, in which mercury was pulling down on a capillary tube and leaving a space up at the top of the considerable evacuation of the air by virtue of the mercury just pulling down on it. Well, Geissler, in his experiments and being a good glassblower, was able to construct this mercury fall tube, as it's called, this type of mercury lift or mercury fall pump, in which you literally pour mercury into a funnel and the mercury falls down a tube, and you have some stopcocks. Essentially what it does is you allow the mercury to flow down until it's running out, and then you close the stopcock that goes to the vacuum tube and open up another one, refill the mercury, then get the air back up and then start again. So the mercury continues to pull down and literally pump a vacuum out of the tube. This, of course, is an extremely laborious process, but it works very well, and vacuums below 10 to the minus third microns could be reached with that. God knows how long you'd have to pump to do it, but I mean, that's how all the early tubes were pumped out. So Geissler, of course, didn't pump all these tubes up to these tremendously low vacuums. A Geissler tube will be working somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1 torr, 1 millimeter of mercury in that particular vicinity, and that's all that's needed to get the effects that are available. At any rate, go on with the history as we will go. Let's show the first tube. I think that, I hope you can see this. I think maybe we want to tilt this a little bit. Maybe we don't. Okay. Actually, I should have, but... Well, we can do that. Let's let's run this a minute without the tube on it. Well, here's the first tube anyway. I'll cover that in just a second. Maybe we can have the lights down. That's pretty good there. You can see the colors in here. They're not only from just the gas, but they're also because the polarity, rather the gases in the tube, but there are different glasses available so that the electron impact also fluoresces those the different glasses. Reverse the polarity. If you notice when you reverse the polarity, you see what I describe as the positive column all up and through here, and the negative area down here, which is really the engine of the glow discharge, is present down at the bottom there. Okay. Let's unhook that tube, and then I'll just hook the induction coil back up in here, and I'll run it a little bit to show you. These type of tubes, there were incredible numbers of these that were made. I mean, it literally, of course, the problem with these is, maybe you can hold that up so people can see exactly what they were looking. The problem with these is they're made out of glass, so they don't bounce. So most of them are gone, and that's one of the reasons why they're not so available. But you can see the workmanship in that. The question you were asking here is that what are the voltages involved? Well, this is a 6-inch coil. We're only running this on 12 volts. It likes to be run on 18 volts as its maximum amount of voltage. But if you adjust the brake over here, and this depending on how you adjust the brake, you get all sorts of different spark out of it, and we really want to leave the brake, I don't need a lot of spark in there, but let's say that's about a 3-inch spark operating there. Go ahead, you can put that tube in. If that's a 3-inch spark point to point, I guess 20,000 volts per inch point to point is approximately acceptable. So we might be looking at a 60,000 volt discharge across the points of the coil, and that is, we don't need that kind of voltage. We could work on 3,000 or 4,000 volts with those Geisler tubes, but we're working with this. While we're setting that up, I wanted to start with this tube, which I failed to do, although I did show it to a couple people. This is called a scintillation tube, and we figured this dates to the 1820s, 1830s. And I'll try to show this to you clearly. What there is in here is there are a large quantity of lead foil dots that are glued in a circular pattern, so that we're not going to hook this up because this tube is quite old and really not to be worked now. But the discharge that you would get jumping between those little lead foil pieces will travel all the way across the tube. So the size of the tube, you could have a tube of considerable length, and it scintillates. It just gets excited, and it was the first kind of do I dare say directed discharge in the 1830s to make something that looks impressive and that people can enjoy. And yeah, okay, this was only fired by a static machine. That is a machine that induction. Well, in that time, let's see. Well, yeah, you could have had some. Both frictional and induction type static machines were used to fire that. Well, not at that time, but like that was the Toepler, Holtz, and Gray machines. Well, the Wimshurst wasn't until the 1870s, and that kind of machine was used to excite that tube, and it would light up because you would get conduction between the little spaces between the lead foil in there, and that would light up, and that gave you something to at least study about the nature of sparks and discharges. Okay. No, that tube is not evacuated. That is, the ends actually come off that tube. Yeah, that's. Can you all hear me? Do I need to talk into the mic too? Maybe, yeah. Okay, yeah. That's right, yeah, okay. Feels like I have a cigar in my mouth here or something like this. Okay, let's do some more of the Geisler tubes. We'll show you just a few of these Geisler tubes here, and yeah, go ahead, bring the lights down, and we'll again run this. This is just another type. Again, the same kind of glass, German, not just German glass, but there is some uranium glass, German glass, and I guess some combinations of soda glass that are used in here. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but you can see the various types of fluorescence around the edge and the seals and so on. But impressive, and you know, begins to show this area of, at that time, natural philosophy, but develops into the origins and basis of modern physics that we're looking at here. This is sort of the, you know, the beginning things of that. Go ahead, we'll take the next tube. Okay, where do you want to? Okay, here's a. You just probably pick that up. Maybe not. Again, another of that basic type of tube. We can see that a little bit better if we. Whoops.
Thank you. I needed that.
That didn't work out. I forgot the end. Well, there's always that side of it. I was going to pick that up, but okay, all right. Yeah, I'll leave that to you. Well, a little shock is always good. It wakes one up and helps, you know. Okay, go ahead. Okay, that's how. The creativity with the manufacturing of Geissler tubes continued, and you see here the next version of a tube. And what was done with this, in fact, let me make it hold that up and make an example of this here. In the continuing process of, there's liquid in this tube, an oily liquid with some kind of dye and coloring in the tube. The idea, of course, was that by doing this, you would be able to change the, you know, I guess the light would refract through there in some curious fashion, and you would get a better effect. And so they had to do some very curious kind of glass blowing to pull that together. And I think the marvelous part of a lot of these is the fact that, you know, these things are from the 1880s, I guess, of this thing, that after over 100 years, they still work, they still are in excellent shape. Yes? Well, yeah, this is a, okay, this, well, this is a question that I field a lot of times, because people look at a machine like this here, which is effectively an alternating current generating machine. However, the amount of energy it takes at the place where the points make and energizes the primary coil and develops the lines of force that cut across the secondary windings is very weak compared to what happens at break, when those field lines collapse around the secondary and you get a considerably larger pulse. So you do have a basically this produces alternating current, but believe it or not, it really does the one direction, the direction that it flows in as the lines collapse over the secondary windings, is much stronger. So the effects show a DC effect, although it really isn't pure DC. Although sometimes some of these, it is pulsating DC. Yeah, let's see what's the best way to. Well, it's not rectified. It's just that the Okay, next tube. This is not the water-filled tube. We'll do that in a minute. Now we see here a tube in which we have internal construction here, and we have a lot of different objects inside, curlicues and twists, and the kinds of glass present in there. There's uranium glass there. There's lead glass here, and they are actually flower vases that are in here. And so the discharge that's at the top, go ahead, top of the vase kind of looks like a flower. The actual positive column effect that's in there gives you that kind of effect. Both. The fluorescence, when uranium glass in its composition is bombarded by electrons, it relaxes and gives off energy at that particular frequency of light, which is green. If you use Pyrex glass, you get a kind of a blue effect. If you use, as you'll see as we go on here, if you use German glass, you'll get a green effect. In those days, to actually fill a tube with gas was a more difficult thing to do, and they didn't have a lot of the gases readily available. So nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, carbon dioxide, so were common gases to fill them with. Okay, I'm going to have the lights back up. Why don't you put this one across the small coil, and I'll show this. This is a you can see the construction of the tube. Let me see here. I can tell by the, I would say this is 1890s or so. You can tell by the way the electrodes are constructed. Notice the intricate, look at the workmanship in the glass. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. The answer is yes. Very limited, but the answer is, you can see the intricate workmanship that is involved in these, the twisting and so on, that are beautiful. Can't answer that question. Well, the oldest tube is the scintillation tube, dating some of the 1820s, 1830s. We have a Della-Reeve tube, but it's not here because the vacuum is gone. What did you say, Jim? That was 1870s?
Late 60s, early 70s.
Such thin glass, soft glass. It's difficult once, you know. The Christie's tag, yeah. Maybe just stick it out on the wire. That sort of that adds class. The Christie's tag, you know, it gives it that sort of, you know that it's pedigree. No, it's got to be good, you know. Yeah. Now the next thing we'll do is we'll lights again, Darryl, if you will. We're the tube here. Yeah. We're going to fire the. You see the effect now. We get a very curious effect here, as the liquid allows the light to be refracted through it. We have the either polarity. Again, you can always tell the polarity by the blue area back in there, because that's where the negative action is taking place on it. You can leave the lights down. I think we're ready for the... leave the lights down. This is a vase with a small pineapple above it, as you can see when we crank this on. And you see the way that these were designed was so that the effect of the discharge adds... it's like flowers or different things that are going to occur in here to allow you to experience the... they all work together in the tube. And you notice the little, actually it looks like it's a pineapple or a bunch of grapes, one or the other, something. It's just sort of fits in above there and all. I should put my glasses on. I can see better. I'm sorry. This coil? Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah, they are. That's one of the reasons why the question was, are these contemporary? Yes, they are. In fact, all of the pieces that are up here, with the exception of the battery box, which I adapted from some other wooden things and put together, these are all fairly contemporary. I would say we're talking about somewhere from about roughly the 1880s through about 1910. Oh, a bunch of Crowfoot batteries put together, 2-volt cells, 1-foot cells, Grove cells. There were, good heavens, you know, if you visit any of these old, you know, telegraph museums or out west or anything, they just have these porcelain jars they used to get down. The old, you know, you know, working in the battery room was a very special duty, you know, and you know, to keep them going. So you would have banks of cells, and you would just keep adding cells for whatever you needed, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of, you know, 1 to 2 volts per cell, depending. And then there was a whole chemistry to that, and that was the story. Yes, they are contemporary. As after I guess you know, the turn of the century anyway, there was a change in the construction of these coils because of the nature of wireless work. That in fact you see in a number of the books, they talk about if you want to build an X-ray coil or a wireless coil, and the wireless coil requires much larger wire because they were looking for larger currents. Where the X-ray coils, which this is, did not require large currents. We're looking for large voltages. So the actual, oh boy, that's now we're getting into the real beautiful stuff. I think that's a, yeah. Let him put his finger. That's what we need to do. Yeah, and you can just maybe turn that a little bit so people can. We'll revolve it a little bit so that you can see it. This, I don't think this is so necessary, but yeah, we. Oh, okay. We're gonna do that one too then. Hello? Okay, there we are. Let's see. Oh, yes, that is a lot better. You can keep it up. Yes, right, exactly. Battery plus. Yes, there was, it was sort of, you know, add your own juice to your battery cells in those days and just keep, you know, just add as many as you wanted and add the necessary electrolytes and so on to go. Let's fire this one here so those of us in the back fraternity don't have to, you know, be too stretched out. This is exceptional. Maybe you can give that a little turn. You know, you can see the double lid. It's liquid filled, and you can see what's called the positive column streaming through the bottom, and then the various colors. You switch the polarity, see, and then you get the same color, but yet we have the bluer section on the other side. The brake on this induction coil is a little noisier than usual, but that's one thing you kind of, okay. What did we do here? Oh, no, don't do that. Let's just give it one of those. There. Up, just keep, you just have to push it. Fused points, that sort of happens as I use these a lot. Okay, you should actually take that down while because that's really. Well, let me. Okay. I'm sorry, yeah. Oh, here we go. It's hard for me. Well, maybe we'll have... how far I can go here. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, right, I have the mic, yeah. Well, like I say, there was water with various colorings, mineral oil, and perhaps some 4X special, too, you never know. Alcohol, that would be, but it's This is the granddaddy of them all. This is a Christie's catalog that shows a lot of these. The answer, the question was, do these, I'm sorry, predate, contemporary with, let's see, the Edison light bulb was 1879, right, roughly. These were in existence from the 1850s. Geissler's first, you know, really production of the Geissler tube and so on was worked that way. He made, yes, we'll get to that one in a minute. That's beautiful. Edison, I don't know that. I don't know that. Or maybe you do know it. These were all around at that time. Okay, let's have the lights and we'll display another tube here. This is just yet another level of vacuum tube, Geissler type tube. And this, maybe we can, let me rotate this a little bit. You can see, oh, it doesn't want to rotate. You can see the positive column goes through most of that. I'll turn it around this way. You see it's quite a handsome level of glass blowing. If you notice, you know, the symmetry in this tube, this is not just sort of thrown together. This is, it's exactly in the center. Everything is evenly done. This really is an example of true love of work and enjoyment of some of the wonders of nature here in the area with a vacuum discharge. Truly a fine piece. The flash won't work, yeah. Okay, that's good. Did everyone get their pictures there with that? Okay. It's very hard to get a real good video. Thank you. Yes, thank you. The cameras are not as good as your eyes. That's exactly the answer to that. That's a perfect explanation. That's, I mean, barring going through yes, it's really true. We're in the process now of making a major video production with a much larger collection, doing all this kind of thing, and we've actually had to resort to the friend of mine who's doing the video work is using a great deal of digital enhancement in doing these tubes, and when the video is available, you will, if those of you that get it, will notice that the digital enhancement effects actually get right down into the, well, I'll just say this, it kind of really gets down to the molecular level of what's going on, because you see all these different pulsing and so on happening with the colors. A very curious effect, you know. Now we're moving into, let me just make a couple of explanations here. There was an experiment done in 1803 by a gentleman named Thomas Young. And that experiment was called the double slit experiment, I guess, I think that's what they called it. Essentially what Thomas Young did was he cut a slit in a piece of cardboard and shined light through it, and the light came out the other side and shone as a light pattern, just light on the wall beyond. But he cut a second hole in there, and then when the light shone through both holes, instead of just being light on the wall, there was an interference pattern, as we call it, which is a very, very curious experience. I won't burn up a lot of time trying to talk about that, but that, at the time, sort of allowed a lot of the natural philosophers and scientists of the day to assume that light definitely had to be, as rather obvious, was a wave phenomenon. And that was okay, and people said, well, that's obvious, and there it is, and so on. Well, as time went on, in this particular studies of vacuum discharge work, and when vacuums that could be achieved became higher, the vacuum inside this tube is somewhere near 1/1000th of an atmosphere, new effects took place. As I said, Plücker, who was the professor for whom Heinrich Geissler worked, had made some curious discoveries about what he called cathodic light, or an emanation of a light beam that left the cathode, the negative element down here, and proceeded forward through the tube. He could see something, and there was, to make this a complicated story short and simple. There was a well, as there was a war of the currents in the 1890s, there was a war of the German school and the English school, whether light was an actual particular phenomenon, whether it was actually made up of some kind of particles in the discharge tubes, or whether it was this was just purely a phenomenon of light waves and so on. And Crookes, the British physicist in the 1870s, developed a series of experiments to try to make the go-ahead touchdown for the English school and show that there was definitely some kind of more than just light waves emanating from this cathode, that there were actual physical particles that were actually emanating from this, and that they had, well, in this case, they could be stopped. And they also, when they impacted on the glass in front of the tube, there was actual heat produced. And this was one of the early experiments that he did, noticing that Crookes, who had created a certain evolution with the mercury vacuum pump, achieving to a millionth of an atmosphere, was able to get much more astonishing effects. And with those higher vacuums, he was able to study these corpuscles. Later in 1897, J.J. Thomson's famous experiment actually made the discovery of electrons, where he could actually get the E over m charge to mass relationship of an electron, really proved by using magnetic force lines and electric force lines to balance out the beam. At any rate, the discovery of the electron. Crookes was aware of this and tried to do a number of experiments to show it. This is called the Crookes Maltese cross tube, and it is probably the most famous of the 19th century vacuum tubes. And what we have here is a Maltese cross in the front of the tube. And you know, Jim, what we might want to do is do it the first time with the cross down. And so this tube is made of something called German glass. Now, German glass is a common soft glass in the 19th and the early 20th century. And we talked earlier about why the colors. And I talked this morning about why Birkeland and other people were just so fascinated with looking at these colors and then sort of wondering if the aurora and other things weren't the same kind of thing. The Crookes tube, the Crookes Maltese cross tube, we'll demonstrate here, is the first of Crookes' series of experiments to try to show that there was more than just a wave nature to what was emanating from the cathode or negative electrode. We have the lights down. This is a beautiful tube, and we're proud to show this. Go ahead and throw the switch. Now, this, yeah, it really... Now that's running the opposite direction, so that it changes. The electron, or the corpuscles are coming from the bottom, hitting the top. Go back to the other way again. You see that? So we have, and look at the beautiful color. The electrons streaming down across here, causing this tube to fluoresce this particular color. And I think you should stop there, actually, because, let me see. We're getting to that. Give us a moment. You would get both effects going on at the same time, and you could still see it, but I've never done it. The thing we got to be careful of here is our old friend called you know what, and I knew we were going to get to this topic at a certain point. I have to say this at this point here. And I didn't do this earlier. I'll take just a second here. We are dealing with tubes that produce, in this particular case, a small amount of X-ray. If for any of you here that are, I'm not gravely concerned about this, but I want you to know that if you sit in front of computer screens, if you go outside with the present state of affairs in the sky, you can get a pretty good blast of things. But right here, there definitely is, with the Crookes tube, there are some small amount of ionizing radiation being produced, and there are some of us here who have had great evenings of regaling all these tubes and such, but not all of you may share that feeling. And if you feel, and I do want to make this obvious to you, I would say that considering the distance, that we're not really talking about any great danger here. But any of you who feel that you don't really want to have any kind of radiation exposure, I guess I have to present this to you at this point, because we're moving into some of these discharge tubes, and perhaps now is the time to move back or whatever. And I'm happy to see that no one is... Okay, great. Where is the screen? If you don't believe me, Ken, this is just an experiment that we'll see. You know, it just maybe let's turn the tube this way. Don't get too close to it because the field's pretty high, but maybe we can see. Can we have the lights? Yeah. You getting anything? Well, no, I don't think we want to go that far. I'm just showing, actually, I think there's more of the, put this here to block off light that comes through and see if you see anything. No, what I mean is in front of it so that the light from the tube can't shine through because there may be a difference. You see, do you still get something? Barely, so it's not really. Okay, let's now move on to the, what happens when you, okay, lights back out. We're going to the, someone, now, so Crook said, if we have a stream of particles emanating from the cathode, they're moving down the tube and striking the glass and causing fluorescence to occur, then if we stop those particles from doing what they're doing, then we should, in fact, see some kind of a result of a shadow on the front of the tube because these particles are being stopped. So he constructed this tube. How are we doing? Go ahead. And the effect is this. And there it is. There's the shadow created by the... run the voltage down a little bit on that. Let's run. Aluminum, I believe, or tin or something. Go ahead, hit it. I want to bring that down. The other way. Polarity. There we go. I want to turn the voltage down a little bit. See, there's the shadow on there of the... so the electrons are being stopped. This was a really... of course, the Germans said, well, now, wait a minute, you know, maybe this is just blocking the light and then casting a shadow on the glass, therefore it doesn't prove anything. So that didn't, so at any rate, Crook said, well, okay, we'll have to try something else. And so we'll look at that with the next tube here. Down the ways a bit, go ahead, okay. Okay, we can have the lights up again. This is just evacuated to about 1/1,000,000th of an atmosphere. That's called Crook's vacuum. The fluorescence in that particular case is due to the electron impact on the glass. You can actually feel on that glass wall of that tube that becomes warm. And if you keep firing it with enough voltage, you can actually burn a hole in the thing and break it, so you have to be careful. But yes, that's exactly the case. I would say that tube there is, it's later, it's 1910. Yeah, 1/1,000,000th of an atmosphere, yeah. No, they were still pumping with, you know, 4 pumps. At the 1910, they had 4 pumps, mechanical pumps, and then they were, let's see, 1910. Oh, boy, that's a good question. Let's see, no, they did not until the, let's see, mercury diffusion pumps, 1920, 25, I don't know, I think, what did they... It was earlier than that. I don't remember exactly. I would imagine this was... They had some very curious circular pumps that they actually got the mercury to circle around. They had a motor on this pump. They could just keep spinning it, and it stepped up the effect that was needed for a mercury capillary pump to take stuff out. Now we have 2 tubes here that are of the bombardment type, talking about some kind of... These are Crookes types, some kind of bombardment where we can again get an effect to take place where... I'm going to move that out just a little bit so that it doesn't excite get the glass. Oh, that's probably all right. We'll run that one first. This is a conch shell. Is that what's in there? This is a piece of conch shell brought in and put into a bezel of some sort inside the tube. Again, the vacuum and then somewhere near about 1/1,000,000th of an atmosphere. And we get electron emission from the cathode of the tube, running down and striking the shell, causing some level of fluorescence within the atomic structure of the shell itself. We're going to excite the atoms of some of the parts of this shell. Could have the lights come down now? I think a picture's worth 1,000 words here. 10,000 words, whatever. Go ahead. And this you can see the level here of, it's very curious. If we reverse that, we can still get the thing to fluoresce. The electrons are coming from the top. Actually, this is the proper polarity of the tube, and you can see, perhaps if you look, that in the bottom of this tube here, there is a shadow being cast on the walls of the tube from the green, in green, the shadow of this conch shell in there, because again it is stopping the flow of electrons from hitting the German glass in the tube and giving that effect. Now, okay, that's good. This tube over here, this is another step in the Crookes style. I mean, Crookes, I can imagine for about, I don't know, 15 or 20 years in there, they spent a tremendous amount of time trying to find one thing after another to really keep showing this different effects that were happening as a result of the bombardment by, they weren't called electrons then, but this mystery thing that was going on. This, we can have the lights down again on this. This is really acceptable. Let's put the actual, oh, that's probably all right. I was going to say that the rocks are up. This is a bunch of fluorescent, see that? And some of the actual powder from these phosphorescent materials in here are on the side of the tube, and you can see it. And if the thing, and actually, yeah, turn it out. Watch when you turn it off. They'll take a second for them to relax. Now, talking about the coloration of the glass under the bombardment, if you look at it, see, it's still glowing. See this? It's still glowing. So we're taking this. It takes time to relax here a little bit. Go ahead. Yeah, you can. You're going to need to crank that. I don't know what they are right offhand, but what they put in there. That tube was made at the turn of the century. But you notice we've got all sorts of different colors. And like I say, the tube, this tube is later, it's not made of German glass. It's probably made of lead glass or something. And so it isn't fluorescing that green, which is actually good because we don't want to have too much of an effect to shadow the effect of the actual rocks in the tube. Now, what's the reason why you're seeing a volume control thing over here? Do that again, Jim, because we're just speeding up the electrons very lightly. We really turn it up. You can push quite a bit of current through there with that, and then we can turn it down almost to nothing. That's good. This design of tube here is look at that. That's still it's still glowing, which is probably just a little bit. No, not warm. Okay, yeah. Okay. This particular effect really led a lot of tube builders and experimenters to move on to even finer levels of putting different types of fluorescent materials inside of these tubes. We'll have the lights, please. Are we at the? No, it should be the butterfly. Yeah, we should. The next tube that we're going to show you, I think, is without a doubt the finest piece that I have ever seen, and I've seen a few. Finest piece of tube, discharge tube. It is a piece of workmanship that actually probably put that on the big coil and turn it down. It would be the best thing. We're looking at the beginning here. I'll show this tube while Jim hooks this up. Inside of this tube here, there is a butterfly constructed out of some metal, and there are, when you see it, you'll understand. Let me just go around with this a bit here. Thank you, Bill. Just to show you what it is. It's just a bunch of rocks in the bottom of it. Let me just do this a little bit better here. Yes, they had done experiments to see that they would work. I don't know exactly what they are, but it's just basically some fluorescent rocks, and you see there's powder on the walls of the tube, and on the top there are just two electrodes, and it doesn't matter, they're both aimed at the center, so when you change the polarity of the tube, it merely moves the cathode beam, the beam of electrons, over to the other side, but they still wind up striking the rocks anyway, and there isn't a big problem with that. This is just a very, very common and basic tube for this. However, oh good, we have a good stand, no need to hold that. This next tube is truly, well, I think that my words are only going to detract from it. Let's put the bricks to it, as they say. And Lights out, please. Watch closely. Reverse the polarity. Yeah. Maybe if you want to stand up in the front rows, don't come up too close, but just, we don't want to turn that way down. To turn it way, way, way down. Look at that. Now cut it. Cut it off. Look at the time it takes for it to relax. I give it a little jolt, you can see. But notice the various colors in the wings. There's red, green, orange, yellow, Kelly green. The eyes, the red eyes in that thing is really, Jim, you've just got to see this. Yes, we do have documentation. I just don't happen to have it right on the tip of my tongue to tell you all of the phosphorescent materials that were used to do this. And on the base of this glass, you can also see that there is a shadow of the butterfly cast on the base of the tube. Germany. This is a German. Is this Otto Pressler? Or Rudolf Pressler, rather? Yeah, it might be a Rudolf Pressler, if you want to know the company that was really famous. Don't run that too long. Let that relax now. And it'll take it a while for that thing. Is it warm? Yeah, we want to be careful of that. Turn it toward the camera. About 1890. Okay. Run it low. Okay, camera ready? Go ahead, see what you can do. Yeah, it's there you go. Yeah, you can see it. But you can see there you can see the effect. Look at the eyes. The eyes, even the proboscis or the antennae are also done. You can see them sitting up and twirling around the top. It is exceptional. You know, an exceptional tube. I imagine a little bit. You know, I mean, what can I say? It's. No, I don't think so, but have you ever spent any time in Victorian England and looking at, you know, I mean, well, I mean, I think it's part and parcel with a devotion to quality and to show the mysteries and wonders of nature by virtue of doing something as ornate and as devoted as possible to, you know, make it to support that kind of thing. Well, I imagine that was probably possible. Well, in 1890, you know, there was there was people using a fair amount of electricity by that time. But you're right in the sense that nobody really was using a lot of electricity. This definitely was something. I think the point you're making, which is good, is that this is definitely something you could take into your house, and with a battery and an induction coil, you could really have a look at some of the mysteries and wonders of nature, and really get, you know, and see something really. I mean, nature's really performing for you here. Well. Yeah, I suppose you could look at that, but I think you could. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that. Yeah, you do it. Well, there's some of us here that have been doing this for, I don't know, 30 years, 40 years, some amount of years, and I don't know. I've got some problems, but you know, I don't. None of them are related to that, you know. What's that? No, but you know, I certainly have a family, and I was well into these things, X-rays and stuff, 30 years ago. I mean, I don't want to sort of, you know, let's find some. Can't find wood anymore. No, I mean, what can you do? According to the, I don't know, you know. We have pyranol oil and transformers. I mean, and we should have been dead, I don't know, Bill, what, 20 years ago or something with all... according to all the experts, we're all ghosts here, you know. All the radiation and radio waves and everything else, I don't know. I'm afraid I mean, I don't stand in front of X-ray tools, although today we will achieve that. We will be told when the video is getting close to when we need to take a break for a few minutes. Okay. Yes, we have the Rudolf Pressler catalog here, which is this is disgusting. You open this up, and for you know, 2 marks you can have a 2 Crooks tubes, you know, 4 Geisler tubes, and they'll throw in a Delarive. Just, you know, well, they didn't call. Well, I guess relatively speaking, they were expensive, but there was a point where they were. I remember looking in the Central Scientific Catalog in the 50s. They were like $1.25 for these fancy Geisler tubes, and I said, "Oh, the next thing we've got to invent is a time machine." You know, go back and stock up. And you can see just page after page of every which sort of tube imaginable. Yeah. Oh, Frederick the Great, maybe. Oh no, that's Bismarck. Yeah, we've got a Bismarck tube here. So they actually even he wasn't insulated from electrons anyway. Come again? The next tube for display. This is a piece of quartz crystal, I believe. The problem with a collection like this, you have to do a lot of research and try and find out what they are, and it isn't easy all the time to know. At least the Pressler catalog. This is not a Pressler tube, but this is another bombardment tube in which this piece of crystal up here will give us some curious color work. Go ahead. Lights. You can see the red. Yeah, there. Give that some. I believe so, but I'm not certain of it. Now that's the reversing the polarity there. You don't get as good an effect when because the electrons are being issued from down here as opposed to switch it the other way. That's better for it. Yeah. See, there's the effect there. Good. Now the next tube we want to display is the next round in the Anglo-German debate war on the nature of these discharges, which was Crookes's next. This is a later tube, but it demonstrates the heating effect. Oh, good heavens! Well, oh, it does it. We have to look, right? It doesn't. Oh, it'll sound. Maybe we ought to hide that. It's a Geiger counter. Well, we can get the same effect out of here. Well, the next tube is definitely chock full of fun. Yeah, this is the Crookes. This is called the Crookes heating effect. The next thing that Crookes did here, and by the way, this tube is one of the tubes that was involved in the eventual discovery of X-rays. They're going to be okay, yeah. Now, in the center of this tube, there is a piece of tin that is set into the glass, and then it's mounted up right in front of the cathode. So it's a marvelous combination to produce X-rays if necessary, and we will see if this gives us a little noise here. But this is the idea here, and you'll be able to see this here if you look closely. We can't run this too long, but you'll notice that there'll be a spot on that piece of tin that will actually begin to light up as a result of electron impact. This is trying to, the next step in Crookes's experiment, showing the particulate nature of the discharge, corpuscles, electrons as they were called in the future. Lights down, please. What would that be? Go ahead. Well, I mean, I wasn't lying to you. Here, I think we can probably dispense with that for obvious. Okay, we crank the voltage back on that when we go into this, and then we'll work up from there. Yeah, keep it way down. Go ahead. Now that's the volt. Okay, turn it the other way now because we want to revert. Now, there is, you see the cathode beam being deflected off the side, and you can see down, see there's a beam coming up and going off. If you turn the power up on that a little bit, that will actually cause that. See it? Now turn it back. Don't outgas it. You see that effect in there? That was the heating effect, the Crookes heating effect, which then Crookes said, well, here we've obviously got something that's actually striking this target, and a particle that's causing this an impact, and you're causing this to heat up as a result of that.
It's just us right up here, right?
It's just us. Okay.
When we start glowing.
Okay. Lights, please. Yeah. Actually, that's okay. But we got it. Let me just have it. Yeah, I'll do that. And here you can see the design of the tube. You can see the way that it's a piece of tin mounted on a glass. What's that? No, this is just the heating effect. And the rays, you can see that cathode beam bounce off there. That's just but it's the idea was it's a focused cathode. You can see it's not a flat focused cathode, so you get for focusing of the rays, of the cathode rays on there. Yes, it's a focused cathode. It's parabolic. The thing about the parabolic cathode is if you change the vacuum higher or lower, you change the focus on that. And so it's very important, as we'll talk about a little bit later with X-ray tubes, that if you don't have the vacuum regulated properly in this tube, the focus of the cathode rays upon the target of the tube will not be correct, and then you will get X-rays that will give you weird shadows and different things that will not work properly. And so you want to keep the vacuum just right, because the focal length of the cathode beam will change as the vacuum changes in the tube.
Something like that costs. 100?
Okay. Yeah, let's do the single electrode and then the double electrode. Next, we have the tube that is called the Crookes magnetic effect tube. And this tube was the next step in talking about if these are just wave propagations from the electrode, then certainly a magnet would not necessarily deflect them. But if they were a particle that had a charge, then they would be repelled and attracted by respective poles of a magnet. So the next construction of a tube here was a tube in which you would have, there's a window down here, and this is a cathode. A beam is cast, as you'll see. We have the lights. I'm going to keep the discharge fairly, yeah, is that right? Oh, okay, get it back the other way. There we go. And if we get this magnet, we'll turn the tube for everybody. So if we get this magnet near here, you can see that there's, and it depends on how we can get all kinds. You can see where the beam focuses in the German glass, the color here. No, they weren't ready for this. They had to wait for a gentleman by the name of Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, who was one of their own, to prove that it obviously was. Oops, yes, yeah.
That was a good one.
Well, let's see. I have to I have to think about exactly how to answer that truthfully. We'll talk about that a little bit later. The Kreuzer magnetic effect. And actually, you can actually get, let's see if we can do it today in here. Let's build up a little charge on my hand and sort of look at the top. It isn't only just by magnetism, but it is by, maybe, well, it's not working. I'm not, in the wintertime, when you can build up a little charge, you can also deflect the beam that way as well. I'm sorry? Yeah, that's it. That's it. This was the late 1870s was the experiment. This tube is later than that because this was a very common type of tube. Did everyone get an opportunity to see that? Okay. There is a coating of barium platinocyanide, I believe, on the piece of tin that is mounted in the center, and there's a slit in the back end so that the rays are deflected elsewhere in the back, but the beam passes through and then strikes the fluorescent screen, producing this green or this blue effect. Now this is the single cathode tube. Now Kreuzer went a step further in his experiments, and he constructed what is called the double cathode magnetic effect tube. Well, actually, I wouldn't call it a magnetic effect tube. We would call it the point was this: if he had obviously a beam of particles with a charge, in this case a negative charge, if he were to take two beams and put them close together, then they should have some deflection by virtue of the fact that they have a similar charge. I thought that your remark to people in the seminar yesterday about working with Tesla coils and saying you should get a book on electrostatics, something like A.D. Moore's book or something, and spend some time studying the idea of charge and induction and all this, I think that was a marvelous piece of advice, because it really does explain so many things. But this is the idea that these beams should actually diverge. Now, the tube doesn't really work that well, so it doesn't really show this effect as well as it could, and I can't explain why. Maybe perhaps the vacuum isn't high enough, but oh, they made, yes, they did. They made, not only did they do that, but they also did this sort of the hairpin tube, so that only one side has any light in it, the other side is dark, because the discharge of the negative end and where the electrons impact at the other end at that vacuum would light up at the other side. Didn't. Let me just go on with this a minute here. What was happening here is we're wiring the anode, there's one pole, and the cathode we have the same wiring, so the beam of electrons, you should see these things diverge, but actually they don't do what they're supposed to do here, and we don't need to use the magnet, but we will. Okay, we have the lights. Are we in a double beam? There we are. Now there's the double beam. Now there is a little bit of let me see if I can go around here and see. Yeah, there is a little bit, actually. Yes, you can see them diverge out toward the end, so there is a little bit of proof of that. Again, with the by bringing the power up a little, we said increase the power, we should get. Yes. Right, and that would obviously be what should happen. Let's give it a swing over to one side here so you can see it. Yeah, oh sure, good. You can see the effect a bit on the, let's see if we turn up the juice there. And again, we can. Okay. Okay, we don't want to run this too long, outgas them a bit. Okay, we can bring the lights up. Questions? Observations?
You said you were
Well, if it gets real hot, you don't want to cook it up too much, because you can get a bit of outgassing, and you can yes, you can do that, or you can go the other way. You can just simply drive a lot of the oxygen molecules or atoms into the glass, the air molecules into the glass, and make the vacuum go too high. But if you heat it up too much, you can see the slit in the double cathode. Well, I think these parts here were actually made separately with a graded seal of some sort, and then, or if this is German glass, so you could seal copper into it, I think. And it's quite a process. It's beyond me, I'll tell you, to explain it, because watching glass blowers at work is amazing. I have some friends that are, and it's just there are some people that have been. I know a few people who are trying to, but it is very difficult, because it is an art that is really lost, and to be able to do this is relatively simple. Well, no, I shouldn't say that's necessarily true, but it's not easy to do this. Obviously, I've heard Wendell talking about glass blowing. You have to get 2 or 3 truckloads of glass before you can even get into the first level. And then it's so many truckloads of glass after that before you really learn exactly how to do it. What is next? Ah, yes. Now we go to another. How is our time on the first tape? We're already in the second tape. Oh, I thought someone was going to tell us when to stop. Okay. Well, there you go, Jim. Let's just move right along. The next tube, in England, these are called railway tubes. In America, they were called paddle wheel tubes. This is another, this may have been the, what do you call it, the pièce de résistance from Kreuzer, or the bee's knees, as they say in other quarters, to prove. Now, we have to balance this tube. This is always, I think probably a little money might do it well. Just sort of jack it up on. Or okay, we have to get this balanced. But this tube is there are about a ½ mica veins set. And when I bring this tube around to show you, the glass blowing work in this tube is really a tribute to glass blowers and their art. And this little wheel that's in the center here has, there's probably more than that, 6, 8 mica veins that are set up. They have painted, is this the multicolored? They painted not 1 but 3 different phosphorescent, or fluorescent colors on here, so that you could definitely see not only the bombardment of each vein by the electrons coming down through the tube, but that when it got spinning really fast, it had, it even give you even a better effect in here. And then the rails in the tube, those are glass rails, aren't they? The rails in the tube are made of glass, not metal. They're made of glass, and they're perfectly well. Again, my words won't describe how beautiful this is. Again, this is running about 1/1,000,000th of an atmosphere, although they will work much higher than that. These are focused cathodes, but in building a tube like this, I once was talking to Ernie Pfaff, who is Technic Products in Chicago, talking about building these things and how difficult it is to get everything focused exactly right. Let's see what we got. Can we have the lights? Let's see what we have here. So the electrons impacting on that, they have, this is, I believe this effect is called transfer of momentum. And I'll just let this just run a little bit. I'm not going to say anything. You can just see this. If you notice, as he changes the polarity, you will see that the beam that comes up out of one side, and then the beam, you can actually see the cathode beam come across and strike that and spin and roll down and such like this. You can actually see that effect. Right, well, yes, you can, that too.
No, they still weren't. They still were not convinced. This was not enough. We had to go. Well, I don't want to get into any jingoistic or some kind of slanderous approaches to this. You know, there was all sorts of things going on between European countries in those days. But like I say, when Heinrich Hertz and Philippe Lenard and Röntgen really got into this, then we had some changing of the guard and changing ideas. I think, you know, we have enough voltage here that even though the thing is on an angle, that there's enough voltage running through the tube that we can actually get this thing to work pretty well. And you can see. In this case, this tube has a little less vacuum in it, and that actually is the last vestiges of the positive column, which is one of the positive electrode related. Actually, in a discharge tube, the negative phenomenon, the dark spaces and up to the Faraday dark space may be no more than 6 inches, 5 inches long, whereas the positive column, if you ever look at a neon sign, can be 60 feet long, because that speeding up and slowing down of the electrons and build-up of positive ions and ionization experiences of less light and excitation experiences of more light get graded up in there. So you're seeing that kind of effect in there. Yes, this is a German-made tube. No, the radiometer is contemporary with this. That's another. Oh yes. Oh yeah, you do that. Go ahead. Observe as we go. Observe the glass blowing work in this. We're talking about a masterpiece of workmanship here, I must say. Observe the veins. Observe, you know, and the one thing about this is you have to be sure to build this so that the veins do not reflect the cathode beam back at an angle that does not allow it to turn. There's all these little things in here you have to do. Plus the fact, like I say, the rails in that tube are rails that are made of glass. And so the workmanship of getting that balanced properly, I mean, that's a very well balanced thing, and it turns and does extremely well. I mean, you're talking about really something that is quite exceptional.
Jim, do you have any idea how many of these might have been manufactured?
I really don't. I don't know. I really don't know. Well, the problem nowadays is, and I think all of us sitting here listening to that Geiger counter, as well as observing the screen, that as a matter of fact, I've heard stories about people being, really hassled by the EPA. You know, yeah, I guess the EPA and HEW, I guess it does it, for even having tubes that in any way produce any kind of ionizing radiation. So they're not being manufactured anymore, which is sad, but I suppose some people might live a few minutes. Yeah, yes, they were. You could still buy a lot of these tubes from Central Scientific Company probably into the 60s. They weren't of this quality, but you could still do it. You know, the name is somewhat familiar. I'm just trying to think if I can remember. I'm not familiar with having seen any of the old tubes. Okay, where are we now? Okay, now I brought these tubes along here. These are, now we are into the area of cathode rays and the actual effects. These are definitely radiation producers. This is was actually probably designed to study very early on. I'm trying to remember do you know that we don't know the dates on these tubes, do we?
Circa 1885. 1885.
This probably was. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. 1885. Well, you see, in the 1890s, there was the work of first Hertz and Lenard were working on actually pushing the electron beams through a small aluminum window in the front of of their tubes and study these cathode rays that would actually exit the tube. And there were a number of tubes built around that time to study some effects like that. Also, there were a tremendous number of tubes like this built just around the time of the discovery of X-rays because people just wanted to study them, try to figure out what was going on. It's like William Morton, the dentist in the United States, when he got the first communication about the discovery of X-rays and how you did it, definitely got to hand it to him for resourcefulness. He said, well, let's see now. He ran right out and got a Westinghouse or something high vacuum light bulb, went right down, got an induction coil. They were easier to find, maybe he had one, and he just simply got he tried it several different ways, but he just got some tin or whatever, and he glued it onto the side of the tube and used the filament pier or whatever in the light bulb as the cathode, and then he used this external piece of tin or whatever on the outside, and he hooked it up across his induction coil and took I guess maybe the first X-ray pictures or close to it in the United States with a light bulb. You know, because you could get that effect. All you need to do is to reduce the vacuum to the point where the electrons can accelerate in this tube without a lot of inelastic encounters, and in other words, they bump into things and get captured or recombine and so on. You need to have a long enough mean free path so that the electrons can actually strike the end of the tube here, and then you get you know, X-rays generated by this. I specifically brought this tube and another tube over here. There's actually three very interesting tubes. The third one is quite interesting because I know that Kenny mentioned you'd really like to take a look at a low power operation and just see exactly what it looks like. So I bid you welcome to take a close look here. We're not running that with a high voltage coil. Yeah. Oh, what are we doing here? The cameraman is... Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Lights down. Turn, it's the other way. There it is. There's your... just a touch. And that is, you know, your very, very earliest X-ray tube. You can actually see the cathode beam coming down, and you can see the impact on the glass wall of the tube quite clearly. And the effects are all quite, it's quite obvious. So this is, I'm not sure whether this is actually, that's the reverse polarity. I'm not actually sure that this was designed to be an X-ray tube, but the story about Goodspeed at the University of Pennsylvania. Actually, recently, Leland Anderson and I were speaking, and he asked me if we were just talking about two gentlemen, Goodspeed and Barker, at the University of Pennsylvania, who actually, Barker supposedly had done some research in some of Tesla's tubes, and we wondered if there was any possibility of finding out if there were anything left down there or any kind of stuff. Actually, I called up the archives and all that, and they said that if there were any, they were probably buried in the physics department. So one of these days it might be fun to get down and dig if they'd even let you do it. But Goodspeed, anyway, the other fellow that was down there in 1890, took the first X-ray picture ever taken, I guess, in the world, or at least claimed so in America. And he didn't, of course, know what he did, but he had different types of tubes like this around and had some photographic paper in a darkened envelope, and he had it around the table and was working with these tubes and eventually developed it. And when the film was developed, it showed definite different. There was like a couple of spherical objects and so on there, and no one knew exactly what that was. After the discovery of X-rays had been made, though, it was obvious what had happened. And what do we have? Some of these tubes, the ends are broken off, and you sort of have to really be pretty good to get we'll get these repaired eventually. But this is a... Oh, I guess, let's see. Well, the 199, the 01A, all those tubes show that. I guess in the early, let's see, did the spherical Audion use a getter? No. First used in 1920 by GE Labs. This tube has a little star-shaped object in here, which is actually the anode of the tube, supposedly to try to cast some kind of a star-shaped shadow in the front of the tube, but it doesn't do it. Go ahead. Lights, please. Yeah. It sort of does it, but reverse it. Yeah, there it is. And you can sort of see a little bit of shadow down there, but it isn't really very good. But that's another, just a very low power kind of. But this, I don't know. Just a touch. Just a touch, maybe. Yeah. Lights, please. I guess we're down to the, what have we got here? Well, this one here will show this. This is a very curious effect tube. I don't know whether this is carborundum in here or not, and you get some curious effects. I don't know what this is. We can run this, and maybe we can just show. Yeah, we can just show this. This is very curious effect. When the first time well, you can see this. I don't know what to say about this, except the fact that it might represent some kind of carbon button lamp phenomena. I don't know. Well, that's why there's very curious lighting on this. It's very strange, and perhaps someone can lend a bit of light to this. Any comments? Well, that's it. Kind of flames, sort of a. It's quite a bright glow coming from that. I don't know. Did you want to take another shot of that? Okay.
Any ideas?
Well, we have. This is one of those. I have no idea. No idea. We don't know. I'm sorry? Say that again, please. I don't know the date that began. I don't know. Well, now we are just about at the end of our display, And the last couple of tubes we're going to show here, this is the classic form of the gas X-ray tube. And this is early. Early, I would imagine this is probably late 1890s, 1900, okay. And the reason why I call this early, I mean, it has a focus. You can see the ion impact burn on the cathode. There's a piece of platinum put into the that part of the anticathode there. There is no regulator on this tube, and what we mean by a regulator is, let me go over. This is an interesting story. I can show you this other one. This is a Rudolf Pressler tube, the other one here, and this has a unique kind. Well, this is early too, same kind of tube, but over here there is a little piece of something in here, and it. I can't remember. I used to know what it is. I can't remember. But you would take a spirit lamp and you would simply touch the spirit lamp to it. It would give off a little bit of hydrogen and it would lower the vacuum. Now, why? Why would you want to do this? These tubes are, like I say, early because if you let's step back a little bit. You're in a doctor's office. You're going to take an X-ray. Now, the thing is, if you start out with an X-ray tube that is well, there's a terminology used in the early X-ray business, and if you read stories about X-ray pioneers and so on, they talk about cranky gas tubes and how hard it is to get one to take a picture. Now, if you're going to take a picture of your finger, then it might only X-rays haven't really changed that much. Film was slow. You had to sort of put your finger down on the film, and then you had to get the X-rays going, and you maybe it was going to take you a minute to take the proper exposure, or 2 minutes, or God love them, in some cases 2 hours, whatever, but you get a sunburn at the same time. And yeah, cook them till they're well done. And but what happened was, is as the tube operates, you begin to use up, and there's a number of ways you can. You can drive the air molecules into the glass wall of the tube and just use up the gas in the tube. The vacuum, after being run for a while, goes up. And as the vacuum gets higher, the resistance of the tube becomes greater, and it takes a lot more voltage to push the discharge through the tube. So as the voltage increases, the penetrating power of the X-rays increase, resulting in the fact that you want to take an X-ray of a hand, and you start out to take it, and everything is fine. You look through the fluoroscope and see that it's just the right exposure. You can see the bone break and all this, and everything's fine. But after a minute or two, the intensity of the beam has become, the resistance of the tube has gone up to the point where now the X-rays, as a result of, instead of running on 35,000 volts, are running on 100,000 volts, completely penetrates the hand, and when you develop the piece of film, you get nothing, except maybe a very faint shadow of the hand, because the penetrating power is so great. So they had to do something so that they could regulate these tubes in one way or another, and this was developed more after 1900. They had self-regulating tubes, and what they did essentially was they would take an arm from, they had a regulator that was up here, might have had some asbestos in it or some mica between plates of asbestos. There were many different things that they used, and well, this is hard to do. They would run this this arm down, and they would keep it at a certain distance from the negative end of the tube, and when the resistance between here got really high, you could actually jump a spark across this space here, which would go through the asbestos or whatever, release a little hydrogen into the tube, lower the vacuum. It was no longer able to jump across here, and the tube would go back to its operating level, and you could space this whatever you wanted to, because tubes were they said that tubes were you could talk about a 2-inch tube, a 4 or 5, 6-inch tube, but the resistance of the tube is how you judged where the hardness of the tube was. A hard tube is a tube with a high vacuum, hard to pass the discharge through. And it was really difficult in 1913 when Coolidge and Langmuir and Willis Whitney and those guys down in Schenectady came up with a ductile tungsten, and they were able to make the first hot cathode X-ray tube. You know, a big cheer went up all around the world, because then that really, they could go to you know, 10 to the minus 7, 10 to the minus 8 vacuums, and they didn't have to worry about this anymore, because they weren't depending upon gas in the tube to be able to carry the discharge. Anyway, I think at this point we are going to enlist the help of Ken, if you will. We've gone this far together, we might as well go the route. Now, at this time, I have to tell you that, and this is, boy, this is this is documented on everything here. So I'm issuing this warning and libeling everybody here, whatever. That we are going to see definitely some X-rays being produced by this X-ray tube, and so any of you that have any trepidations about this, I would ask you to. This is not extremely dangerous, but there are X-rays here. You're going to see a gas X-ray tube in operation, which is something you may never see again. It is a very beautiful thing to see. Perhaps at a distance, it's more beautiful, but it is something a phenomenon that is really a once-in-a-lifetime thing for some of us. I've seen it a few times. Some of others you have too, but. We're really going to go for it here. This is on video too, so there'll be a lot of evidence. Whatever. At any rate, observe that you will see one important thing about the X-ray tube. There'll be a hemisphere in the tube. One part will be green, and the back part will be different. And the front part is where a lot of only about what is it? Less than. Let's see. I always forget these numbers. Well, maybe 1/2 of 1% of the electrons that's too many. Less than that, anyway, that strike that target will actually produce X-rays, produce characteristic X-rays, and so on. Most of the electrons are going to wind up being deflected and bouncing around, and you will see that they will strike the glass walls of the tube, forming a hemisphere. This is made of German glass. This is a Rudolf Pressler tube, by the way, one of the ones out of the catalog we were showing around. Which makes it kind of neat, and you will see the effect here of what a gas X-ray tube looks like. If you were in a dentist office in 1905, you could actually have observed this for 15-20 minutes at a time, or a doctor's office or something, and gotten yourself a suntan as well as a little education in natural philosophy. Well, how far away will the X-rays affect? Well, of course, we have the law of inverse squares in effect here as well, and we're not running with very much current or voltage. We're going to keep this down, but I would say that within a few, someone with a better knowledge of this like to make a comment. You heard it. At any rate, well, here we are, and this is sort of the climax of our show here to see this. Could we have the lights down, please? Okay, and we'll try to show this from side to side and give everybody a really good dose. No, that's right. Turn it the other way again. You can just see this. No, that's the reverse. You can see that's the other way. Turn it. Don't run it that way too often. Go ahead. Kick it back. Yeah, go ahead. There it is. Turn up the voltage a little bit, you can see the penetration power increase. See? See, that's just turning up the gas on that. Okay. That particular screen has tungstate of calcium tungstate. They abandoned barium platino cyanide in the 1930s, 1920s, I guess. Good heavens, is that possible that we? Yeah.
I thought that thing was going to freeze.
Well, anyway, it should actually really sing a happy song for us. Well, actually, see what happens over there. I think that's something to see. Go ahead. Let's lights again, please. Beautiful. See the effects? Yeah. Okay. Well, this tube here was specifically made to generate X-rays with a focus cathode and everything, the proper vacuum, a regulator, and so on. The other tubes, when they were made, X-rays were not understood, so therefore we couldn't very well say that they produce X-rays, but they were not. That is the last of the tubes that we have to display. Well, that's just another X-ray tube. We don't. I think we've sort of. You know, I think we're thoroughly ionized. If any of you would like to see I think actually that we have been here now for 2 hours and 15 minutes, which is I really appreciate your patience. Well, I think we gave you a good show anyway, but I mean but I appreciate your patience. Everyone stayed with us even through the high energy photon section of the display. And we kind of have to. I think we have to move on to the next phase of our operation here. So I think we're going to have to close down. I don't know. I'm exhausted. I think tonight I may sleep the whole night. Something. Yes. One thing. People asked this earlier, and we will make mention of it. There will be available in my partner's antique bookstore and other thing. The name will change to Antique Books and Geisler Tubes. There will be a few items available here. None of the ones you see here. This is the major. Those are the better parts of the collection. You won't find the butterfly tube for sale or such. But there will be a few minor items available down at the bookstore, and so and that will be open. It will be something in the neighborhood of this type here will be available, and so if you stop down there, Jim will discuss that with you, and I think there might be I don't know 15 or 20 tubes of this type available. So what else? I think that's all. Thank you very, very much, and it's been really enjoyable doing this. I'm glad that we've got a chance to show these tubes.